Welcome to the episode of Everyday Parenting Podcast. Today, I really want to focus on our educators. What roles do they play in our life? What roles have they played in our lives? And what roles do they play in our future? With everything that has been happening in the world, we have all really experienced a collective understanding of the challenges that have been out there. The pandemic, we have wars, we have gun violence, we have everyday challenges that come up for us, everyday challenges that come up for our teachers. And we need to look at it all. We need to look at that and understand that educators are people too. Today, I want to focus on how all of this has affected our educators and what the classroom looks like for them. So my guests today on this podcast are all educators from across the country, different levels, different ages, of years of teaching to years in the classroom to different ages that they teach. They're all coming together today to give us insight to what it's like to be in the classroom before the pandemic, after the pandemic, and beyond. Looking at all the different pieces, understanding that they have been through everything we've been through, but we've expected them to continue on. We've expected them to drop everything, leave everything, turn on that Zoom or walk into that classroom and be that supportive person to you and to your child. That's a lot. You know, they're not trained to be psychologists. They're not trained to be police officers. They're not trained to be nurses or health technicians. They're trained to be educators. What does that mean? What does that mean for them? That's what I want to hear today. I want to give them a voice. I want to give them a chance to talk about what it's like to be in the classroom with your children and what you can do, hopefully as parents, to understand that and to know how to work better with our teachers. You know, our educators are frontline workers. They deserve our respect and understanding. What have we done as a collective society to alter, to change, to give them the support they need? What have we done? Let's not assume that educators are doing okay. Let's not assume that they're going to be fine. Think about your role as parents. When your child leaves for school in the morning, do you automatically assume that your child is going to feel safe? Do you automatically assume that they're going to walk into a classroom and the educator is going to be there and be ready to take care of your child for the day? They provide a safe environment. They provide a place for the child to learn. But I think something we've learned over the past few years is that, you know, if we've watched our children learn from home, of really what our role is. What is our role as a parent with a child? What is our role? What do we see our role from our teachers? I think it's been a very interesting observation to see how parents have really kind of come to realize more of who their child is, was, can be. And I see a huge influx of parents wanting and seeing things from their child that they never saw before. Their teacher over the years might have said, hey, your child really is struggling with paying attention, or your child is really struggling with remembering content and being able to use that information. And we might in the past have said, oh, they'll figure it out. The teacher will work, educator, they'll work with it, they'll figure it out. But you know what I'm seeing now? Is now that parents have had to really sit down and work with their child one-on-one, have that relationship with their child, have that time with their child, the parents are now saying, hey, I get what that educator was telling me. I get what they were trying to tell me. I didn't see it before, but I now have lived it. I now have experienced it. Can you help me? That's what I see. I see a lot of that going on. The educator can never replace or never should replace the role of a parent. And I think that is something that we have truly learned over this last couple of years. The educator has a role, a parent has a role, and a child has a role. And each of us have to learn and continue to learn what those roles are. So let's spend some time today listening to these educators, understanding what their role is, helping them help us learn what our role is as parents, and understand how we can keep this system going. We all need each other. We've realized that for sure. How can we help? What is our role? Understanding the parent. The parent is an important part of this. You have a job to do. It is not all the teacher's job, not all the educator's job. That's not their job. You are the parent. Get involved as a parent so you know what your responsibilities are, what comes with being a parent. Teach your child the role in the classroom and their role with the educator. Teach them what their role is. Teach them what the rules are about being a student and having an educator and a teacher in front of you. We all have to understand that change is inevitable. That's life. Life is full of changes. So we need to support each other. We need to understand that. We need to empower each other. We need to support our educators, and we have to become more involved. We need to support in whatever way we can. Little ways go so far. So remember, your child needs your time, and you need to give your time to your child. Your educator is there to educate your child while at school. That's their role. We all have our roles. Your child's role is to come to school, be ready to learn, and be respectful of that process. And we need to help them with that also. To all the educators out there, I just want you to know I respect and admire your courage. I respect all that you do. And I encourage our children and our youth and all of society to please do your best to help the educators so they know we are all working together as a support system. So let's listen today to this group of educators that I have brought together to learn from them and to understand what it is like to be in a classroom and what we can do as parents. Let's welcome our educators. All right, welcome to Everyday Parenting Podcast. I have my educators here right in front of me. We are going to get started right away with our first educator, Brent. Go right ahead, start with us today.
Yeah, well, hey, thanks for having me on. I'm really interested in this, even though I am retiring, even though this was my last year. I was in the business for 37 years. And I was a substitute teacher. I was a junior high teacher. I'm a high school teacher is what I finished as. And I really loved seventh grade, really loved that seventh grade vibe. I think that they're really excited, and I love juniors as well. But one thing I want parents to understand is that, yeah, we did come out of a pandemic, but it's always pretty hard sending your kids to us and hoping that we're going to fix them. I think that that's probably the biggest issue a lot of teachers have, is the idea of being the fixer.
Yep.
And we are educators in the sense that we are stair steps, and we get stepped on quite a bit, and the steps have worn away. You know, they are still nice marble steps leading up to whatever, but they get worn, and it's the kids that are doing that, which is fine. And what we want parents not to do is to carry the kids up those steps, because it just makes the steps a little bit more worn, a little bit more scuffed. And we generally can't get to where we want to have the kids. That's just one of my thoughts of many.
Yeah. Brett, what do you see to be the most when a parent, when you say that a parent is carrying those kids up those stairs, how do you see that? How do you see that play out?
We've all heard of the helicopter parents, and that is a kind of parent. The pandemic gave us really the lawnmower parent or the bulldozer parent. Mm. And it's not so much the helicopter, which is something that all parents do. You want to come in, you want to make your presence known, you want to get to know your teachers, you want the children to be safe and secure and so forth. And that's expected. But the bulldozer parent is, to heck with the consequences. I'm going to go in and make sure that my baby has what I think my baby needs, which may or may not be an appropriate need by the parents. And I'm not saying that the parents are wrong. It's just that when kids are away from the parents at school, they're different humans. When they're at home with their parents, they're different humans. We do that. We take on a role that's just advantageous for a setting or whatever. And the kids are able to really express themselves and be different and take risks and whatnot. But the parents limit that in many ways. Or if the kid is spoiled or feels that they're the center of the universe, then the parents can bulldoze in or even helicopter in, and it gives the kid a license to be over the top. And it takes away from the other kids in the class. And that's, I think, another thing that parents have to realize is that we have 30, 36. I had a great small class this year of 22, I think it was. And I was just as happy as I could be to have 22 kids. Oh my God. Yeah. But they were about 30, 34, 33 in that neighborhood. And that's a lot of kids. That's a lot of personalities. Yeah. Yeah. And too many bulldozers, in a construction site like that, it doesn't get any work done.
Yeah. How do the parents normally confront you? How do they come in? How do they bulldoze? Is it emails, phone calls, arriving? What do they show up? What's happening?
I have to tell you, I did not have a lot of bulldozers, me personally. Maybe it's because I'm an old man. Maybe it was because, hey, that's Mr. Beaty or whatever, don't go bug him. I always welcomed it. My door was always open, and I always told everybody, come on in at any time.
Yeah, yeah.
But they would be email, it would be a meeting or whatever, and it was generally fairly positive. It was the stories I heard. La Cañada is a very high-performing school, or the school I teach at, La Cañada High School. Mm-hmm. Very high-performing, high expectations. Parents who are engineers, parents, work at JPL, parents who are fairly well off and fairly wealthy. And so they rightly want their children to follow in those footsteps of success. So,
sure. Any other educators that are on this right now, would you like to add anything to that concept, to that idea?
Yeah, I actually agree a lot with Brent. And I think one of the things I've noticed that I would love for parents to know is that it's okay for students to take risks, and it's okay for them to fail. And that's something that I talk about at the beginning of the year at back to school night. I tell the parents, like, the first math test they take this year, they might not do that well, but all that is for us is data, and it allows us to know where we need to work harder or how we need to study. And I think it's all appropriate development. And I definitely, what Brent's saying resonates with my experiences as well, just because it does sometimes feel like the parents try to take control. And in the long run, I don't think that helps the students learn what they need to with life skills versus academics. So
yeah, definitely.
Well, and I love that you're talking about life skills there, right? Like we need to teach kids that it is okay to fail. And we need to help parents understand it's okay to sit on the side and watch your kid fail for a second. We don't need you to bulldoze in and save them every moment that they have a rough spot.
Yeah. Yep.
That is how we learn. That is how we grow, both as people, as academics, as scholars. That's what life is about.
Yep, definitely. Yep, believe me, I run into that at a non-educated, I run into that at the home and everywhere, just the parents jumping in and wanting to make it better all the time, just with simple little things too. You know, I can't cut my meat. I can't eat. Okay, just simple things.
Yeah.
Well, I remember that as a kid too. I mean, I remember sitting down at the table and not being able to cut my meat. My dad said, "Well, you're going to figure it out."
That's right.
He showed me how to do it, but then he didn't hand the fork to me.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to do that. And I sit there as a parent and as a teacher, and how do you find that balance? Because I think that sometimes that's the hard part.
Yeah. Well, and I think as Kristen was saying too, it's that, you know, allowing, you know, being really upfront with parents. I think that's the question, the piece here that what I just pulled out of that one is, you know, communicating as often as you can with those parents up front of this is how I approach it. This is how I see it. And having that initial piece versus trying to, you know, after the fact, well, this is why I did it. Well, why didn't you tell us that? You know, then they get so defensive and like, you know, we didn't know. And then my child didn't know. And, you know, all those pieces. But Brent, back to you. We're back to you. So continue on, please.
Oh, I think we should all chip in on this one. This is probably the key of education. I mean, right here, the idea of communication. We're trying to communicate to the kids, and we're trying to get them to move from somewhere here to somewhere higher, right? We don't know where they are, but make them a little bit smarter, more educated, or whatever. It's all communication. And then we have the communication piece with the parent, which is kind of something we really want to take care of early. We want to have it in our syllabus. We want to have it in our back to school night. And it's like, okay, get out of here. And now it's time to go. And so the communication aspect is, I think what upsets parents the most is they don't want to be told to get out of here. It's like that. I don't, those of you who've taught elementary school, but that first day of school, that very first day for that kid and that parent is the hardest day, because the parent is giving this baby over to the school, and then they're told to get out. And the elementary school teachers who know what they're doing say, yeah, go, get out of here, go, they're going to be fine. And of course, what happens? The kid's fine. After 5 minutes, the crying stops and everything's fine. Well, add to that years and years and years of school, and that same anxiety for students is there. The same anxiety for the parents is there. The same anxiety for the teacher is there. And I think it's just harder. It's not easier for parents to let go. And those parents whose kids graduate from high school and go to college, I remember that. I mean, that's traumatic. That is trauma. And then getting into college, further trauma. It's all about communication. It's all about assuring the parent that we're doing the best we can, and the kid's doing the best they can. On that cutting the meat idea, those of us who teach high school and see the kids go through the college application process, I think is torture. I really think it is a modern torture device to make kids feel bad about themselves. And then the parents think that it's somebody's fault that their child did not get into the school of choice. And again, it comes to this idea of letting the kid be the kid. Let the kid fill out the application. Let the kid fail in school. Let the kid own up to whatever. Let the kid make a choice and not go to the school the parent wants them to go to, and feel good about it. So that's
I had an approach with my kids. You know, fill out your application. You do it all. It's your journey here.
Yeah,
I was hands off. Someone can tell you that in this group.
I was gonna go after.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
No, truly, I feel like the biggest thing with like communicating with your teachers and with the students is that you are trying all to build skills for the students. Like you are trying to build that self-advocacy, you are trying to build that self-responsibility. And the more you can be hands-off and like support them in that, but even like if you do need that support, checking in with the teachers to be like, how are they doing in this? Like I want to know how they're doing, but letting it be the kids' journey and like giving them the chances to fail. I think that's truly the biggest thing, is like building those skills, letting them fail, but also you can get those check-ins as you ease off.
Yeah, no. And I think and I was an educator at one time too, being an educator, being a parent, being a therapist, it's all part of this journey of, allowing, when I sent my children off to school for the first time, I remember that letting them go, right. And trusting, and anyone knows me knows that I have to trust before I'm going to let my children go anywhere. What I did with my children in school, it was really to get to know those teachers. And I made an effort to get to know them. And not only me, but I encouraged my children to get to know those teachers. Ask them what their favorite color was, that teacher. Ask them what their favorite flower was. Ask them what their favorite cookie was, because my children and I would make those things for those teachers. We would make their special cookies for them. We would give them those things. We would take care of them and nurture them. And that's something that I always put value on, was making a relationship with the educator, with the teachers, with the staff, not just the teachers, but the staff, but also and modeling that for my children. Of, I trust this person, I'm getting to know this person, I'm trusting this person. And I want you to also learn that by watching me, but also doing it yourself. So I think that was but it was always this ability to communicate. It was a very huge piece, and finding ways to communicate with the teacher. And I found it as a parent, and when I was an educator in the community college district, it was very interesting how people communicated with me, or how I learned to communicate with teachers. And every teacher is so unique, right? So they some like emails, some like a one-to-one, face-to-face, some like in passing, some like, volunteer in the classroom, and then I'll give you a little time, right? And that's, so from your perspective, teachers, we're all different, right? So how would you like a parent to ask you that question? How would you like a parent to communicate with you? What do you find the most comfortable way to communicate with parents? Emails are a great idea, right? You want a great invention. But it does take that personal piece out of it, and that interpretation of an email and words can be so like a text message. It's so difficult to read actually what is being said there. And a parent can read something such as, your child's having a really difficult time, with their math and remembering math facts. Can we talk about it? Oh my gosh. That would set a parent off. It's like, versus just saying, hey, they're having a hard time with the math facts. Maybe we could work on the 10s this weekend. That's hard to say in an email, right? But teachers, tell me about that a little bit more for you.
I think a real challenge on that. I mean, we all like email because we can take it at our pace and take it when we get to it. I think we feel we could be easily overwhelmed if we had to meet face to face with every single parent.
Yeah, well, especially in the high school. The high school is a very different situation versus an elementary. Christina has elementary. That's a little different. You have, Christina, how many students do you have, or did you have this year?
I have 32 in my homeroom, and then we had 94 with all 3 6th grade classes. So I would see all 94.
Wow.
But it is very different. So it's kind of, I agree with everything the high school teachers are saying, but elementary, we try to foster more of a community because it's more of a partnership, teamwork, and then they kind of know how I want them to communicate. I, for example, have an open door policy, but I would like notice. I don't want to be bombarded. I have not had the bulldozer effect yet. After the pandemic, it's been like, here, they're yours, and I'm trying to, get a hold of them. So it's a little different. But in elementary school, just like Maribeth was saying, I really, as a parent, I had the benefit of being a teacher prior. So I kind of knew to befriend the teacher, but it's obviously not my friend. We're not going to go out and have social time. But in a way it is, because I'm trying to teach create the connection between my child and the teacher. So I look at now teaching the same way. Those are someone's babies. And as I'm getting them ready to grow up and mature, I still want that community sense in my classroom and that partnership. So open communication, they can call, just not, interrupt instruction, obviously, and be respectful. But I really do have an open door, and I have no problem working with parent. So far, so good. So it's worked. But again, notice, common respect, common politeness, and just build that team together. And it works so far.
Yeah. Josh, you have elementary. Would you say that's?
Yeah. Elementary has to be different than high school. I don't know that. Yeah. I don't know that world, but but I love being able to talk to parents. I think that that is the most important thing that I do in my classroom.
Same. Yeah.
I build relationships with kids, and you build it with parents, because that's how we grow together. We build each other up. I want your kid to reach this goal. I can't do it on my own. You can't do it on your own. We have to come together and form this bond where we love this kid for who they are, where they are, and we help them grow. And I think that happens the most through communication.
Yeah, definitely. No, and I the one thing that I always I use this term for my families is you got to build bridges between the children's world. So the bridge between home and school, very early on in elementary school, we've got to build those bridges, right? So it's that whole thing of, just one bridge would be knowing your teacher's favorite cookie, right? Okay, we're going to make some chocolate chip cookies. Take those cookies, right, to your teacher. That's building a bridge between that home and that school, right? The home and that teacher. And then that's going to give that child ability to walk in and say, I made this for you, right? And that communication then starts, right? Because we can't just have a child walk in. Josh, you want to talk? I can see.
Well, I don't know if I need to say like 1, 2, 3. Are you like, I don't want my kid to sound like a kiss ass when I say this, but but when he walks in and he says like, hey, what's your coffee? And he brings it to you. I don't want him to seem like a kiss ass.
Sure.
That is him reaching out to you to get to know you. And it might not be coffee. It might be, what's your favorite color? And then he goes and colors you a picture. But when we start to see our teachers as people, I think that's when we start to humanize the educational process. And we start to see teachers aren't on some pedestal that's way up here, or as society sees us, way down here.
Let's put it there. Let's put it in reality, Josh, because that is the reality right now.
We are people that want to be loved just like anybody else, and we want to love your kid for who they are.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. Yeah.
To just like add on to that, I feel like when you're starting that communication, just on both sides, assuming best intent, assuming the parents are coming with like, we want to help our kid, and assuming the teachers are coming there with, we want to help those kids. Like always just assuming that the best intent is there will make all the communication better throughout the entire year.
Right. Don't go in just blazing. Right.
Yeah. And I think Hannah, you've expressed too, you've learned that the hard way, misinterpreting maybe to, of a parent coming to you and you thinking, oh my gosh, they're coming at me. But it actually was a really nice conversation, right? And that's that, I think over time we learn to trust that, but you also have to be really alert to that piece too, that we don't always know how it's going to come at us. But yeah, very cool.
Well, I also think that, and I've been, like I say, I've been teaching a long time. But even my last year, if you see the email, you're wondering in your mind, okay, is this going to be a bad thing? Is this going to be a good thing? And I had all seniors, and they were, under enormous stress. Hannah, you remember that everybody remembers that senior year, waiting for that letter. And I was always kind of a little bit hesitant, not nervous necessarily, but hesitant about, okay, what am I about to open up here? What's going on here? And it was 99% of the time, it was pretty anodyne stuff. I mean, it wasn't a lot of like really heavy duty, what are you doing to our children? I had a couple of those, and they were anonymous, which I thought was kind of strange. We had this anonymous posting that they allowed parents to anonymously say something about a teacher, which I think is a horrible idea at any school, any leadership to have an anonymous tip line. And I thought, well, that's not right. But for the most part, the parents they're worried. They were worried about their kids.
So I do know about that tip line, because actually I didn't know it was generally it's for anything, right? Anything at school. Yeah. Cause I know it did work really well for a situation where a child was being sexually harassed.
Absolutely.
So but for a teacher getting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Potential threat. Absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. Brent, do you have anything more you want to add, or before we head to another introduction of someone else and maybe
No,
bring up
let's
some
go.
other-
Let's.
all right.
let's
Who
hand
wants
it
to go
off here.
next? Jump on, and whoever wants to go next. Introduce yourself and a little bit about you. Go. Who's going?
I felt like I already introduced myself, but I am Josh Monroe. I teach 5th grade in Omaha, Nebraska. I've been teaching for 10 years now. I feel really old. I don't know if you post things on like YouTube and stuff, but I got a lot of gray hair going on. I don't know if it's from having 3 kids or 10 years of experience. I'm blessed enough to work at the school that I attended, which is a high poverty school. But I love that about what I do because I get to walk in the shoes, or I walked in the shoes that my students are currently walking. And I think that that's a really cool experience for me.
That is really cool. Josh, tell me a little bit about your experience growing up as a child. What was, when you walk down those halls, what pops into your head? What do you remember?
If anybody knows me, they know that I'm going to say the same thing over and over again, and it's Mr. Henry. He was my 4th grade teacher. I remember absolutely nothing that he taught me, but I remember the way he made me feel. And I remember that he played with me at recess. He ate with me at lunch. I remember him teaching me how to play chess, which we can't do that anymore, right? You can't teach a kid how to play chess because you got to get them ready for the state test.
Yeah.
I remember things that are about being a person from my experience at that school. So
yeah.
I don't know. I loved school because of the way that it made me feel.
And I think it's really cool that you actually chose to go that route when you're with your life too. I think that's
So I'm gonna throw out one more cool thing for you, because I talked about Mr. Henry. I teach at the school I went to. He is now my teammate, and so we teach together. And so it's kind of a big circle of life. Little Lion King there for you.
Yeah, no, and I did the same thing. I went back and coached at my high school, and for my coach, and his name was Mr. Henry, also Bob Henry.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But I ended up marrying a Henry. So there we go. So not the same Henry. I just want to clarify that. Not the same Henry. But I went back and coached high school basketball, and it was under that same piece of he was that genuine individual who made me. I was a horrible athlete, but it didn't matter. It was just fun, and I fouled out. The story was I fouled out at every game, but he didn't care. He used to yell at me. He thought it was hilarious, but he enjoyed me. But he hired me back to be a coach because I was a genuine individual that he loved being around, and I loved being around him, and it worked, right? And we had a great coaching career together. A short one, but it was fun. But it's that same idea, right? That circle of life, going back and doing something and being with someone that we enjoy. So very cool.
That's really important. This year, my last year, I taught 2 children whose parents I taught in the 7th grade back at Eagle Rock.
Wow.
So, and it was a fantastic experience. I mean, I remember their parents. And I spoke with him. It was great. And we have a great picture of me and all of the brothers and sisters. Plus, many of my kids that I taught, 7th grade, are still my dearest friends. I mean, they are dear, dear friends. I could call them right now and say, hey, what's going on? And they're in the education business. One's the principal, Daniel Steiner, at Taft High School. I taught his sister. I taught him. I mean, great family. And I think that's important that we make that, like Josh talked about, that connection. I taught with people who taught my wife back at Eagle Rock, which I thought was also pretty cool.
Yeah.
When I came to La Cañada, I taught with a guy whose uncle I taught with. I mean, it's a small world. It's only 6 miles square. I think the entire world.
Yeah. But when I mentioned earlier before the podcast, I said, Brett and Josh, you two remind me so much of each other, just different generational teaching. But Brett Beaty is known for his relationships. This man is a legend for relationships. And that's why I wanted him on here, because he is the man or the teacher, I'm not going to say man, but the educator who will be on the sideline of every game that his kids are at and cheering them and using their name and encouraging them on. And that's what he's known for. That is his gift of life, is making connections with people, remembering names, and making that authentic connection. And that is your gift. It truly is. And Josh, when I found Josh and brought him in here, he was that same person. And that's why I wanted you two to be together on this and brought you two here. But it's all about connection. But the question today is, how do we connect, right, to kids? How do we allow parents to connect, right? And how do we teach parents to go back and connect? And I think I saw a glimpse, and you saw a glimpse too. It might have been a very difficult glimpse because we were all kind of drowning as we saw it happening. But the glimpse that I saw was, I have parents who finally got to know their children. And it was during that pandemic time, there was an absolute glimpse of reconnection. As hard as it was, there were parents who were able to connect with their children, learn to know their children, see what they were challenged with, really finally hear. I can't tell how many times I've heard my teachers tell me that my child has a hard time paying attention. I thought it was just because he's a boy and he's sitting in a classroom. Now I really get it. I see him struggling sitting here on Zoom. Well, Zoom doesn't help either, but I saw him struggling at home. I saw his classmates on Zoom. They weren't doing what he was doing, right? That comparison in a positive way. But that form of communication, that form of understanding, that form of connecting with their own children was enormous. Did you see that? Did you see parents or parent differently that was going on? And, it was, I don't know, Josh, did you end up in Nebraska? Were you on Zoom as long as we were on Zoom out here? I don't know. We're from all different places here. So how long did you teach on Zoom, Josh?
We only did fourth quarter.
Oh, really?
That's it. And then the next
of what year? Of what?
So what would that have been? March 13th is when the world shut down.
Yeah.
Right.
We got out of school May.
Right.
That's the only time I had to teach only online. And then when we went back in August, it was, you had the option to be online or in person. And that year I had 2 online and 20 in person.
Okay.
Really? Okay. So Christina, what did you have? Because we were on Zoom, right? We were
on Zoom that whole after March 13th, end of the year. And then we started on Zoom all the way until after spring break in March.
Yeah.
And then it went to the hybrid.
Yeah.
It was that was the hardest part, is seeing the rest of the country have homecoming, have all these things that our kids were getting in our bubble here. And that made it even worse. So we were for a long time.
Well, and I want to talk about this too, because I see families all over the world. So I talk about this, that I have families in Europe and Scotland and Ireland and Germany, and so I saw it all happen before it happened here, and they stayed longer. They were in lockdown longer than we were here too. So it was a really strange phenomenon to see it all kind of play out that way. But interesting, right? Yeah. Wow.
Well, I thought that the way that it played out on different parts of the country is super interesting too. Like, we're all part of the United States, but Nebraska did it way different than a lot of different places, but we still saw the same things. Like,
yes,
what you were talking about with kids acting differently online, that one quarter that my kids were online, when we came back, it was so much different. It was so different to see them, the way that they weren't able to interact with kids.
Yes. Yeah.
In the, I don't want to say socially acceptable, but grade level way that they typically do. And I don't know if anybody else saw that, but we're still seeing it play out. Yeah. And we were only there for a quarter. So I can't imagine what it was like if kids did that for a full year. And I have a kindergarten son who wasn't in school during COVID. And I look at what that year did to him when he wasn't able to go to daycare, but that was only for a summer for him. Like, how do we help kids get back to that level of social ability, in-person social ability? Yeah.
Well, and that is the question that I'm dealing with on a regular, and we're all dealing with as professionals. But I want to tell you the statistic here of developmental piece of how long it really could take. And that is a sad state. This catch-up piece, and I hate to give numbers because it kind of gives us all this, oh my gosh, but it is the truth. It takes, 2.5, 3 years to kind of catch back up to what was to a chunk that's been missed developmentally. That's how long it takes to kind of bring it back. So, but the question is, when summer break happens, and I was just dreading when we had, when kids were finally back last summer, and then we had the summer break, it was like, we're just getting back on a roll, right? And then we had the summer break. It's like, oh no, all those kids that I really needed to stay social and get involved were now back home on their computers playing games and doing that. But it really is going to come back to the classroom again, which is so difficult. We got to add that social emotional learning, heighten it. And I was telling, when I was working with schools and teachers and school districts, going back into the school, bringing the children back, I was really working with these teachers on learning, how to not just walk in and say, okay, get your math books out or get your iReady, let's do some group dynamic work. Let's talk. Let's, have a sharing time to really learn about what you did this weekend or that last night, what was difficult, what was hard, what was happening on the playground, how can we work through that? That's what it's going to take. It's going to take a lot more all the way up. And I see it as volunteering at the high school. That's what I'm doing when I'm walking around with my dog as a volunteer in the campus with my therapy dog. That's what I'm doing. I'm finding those children who are, I call them the perimeter kids, right? The kids that are kind of on the perimeter that don't quite know how to engage. And they're the ones that are walking my dog and bringing my dog in with me. And I let them hold the leash while people come. Because if you see me on campus, there's I'm a person and a dog, but there's like a swarm that kind of follows me around the campus. And I bring that kid along with me and have the kid with me. And I say, hey, can you answer the questions? Because I answer these questions all the time. What's the dog's name? How old is he? What tricks does he do? And so I have that child take on that role. But that's what it's going to take. It's going to take all of us finding, and not just you as educators, but it could be the library staff. It could be the office staff, the counselors. Our school is blessed to have a wellness center, at the school, which is doing so much for our children. I know, Christina, where your daughter graduated, they just created a wellness center also.
Yes, they did.
It's such a blessing in so many ways, because we're taking this burden off the regular counselors who are doing the academic piece. And now we have full-time therapists on staff, which is so necessary to have that check-in. But so Josh, the answer is we have to be able to then not just at school do it, but we have to educate the parents. It isn't just about you and the children. It's about now, let's bring in more education for parents, because that's what I'm saying. When I go back to, I saw parents connecting with their children, and we need to continue that. And Christina's right. It was like, drop your kid off. They're at school. Yes.
Yeah,
go.
They were so happy.
And now we're just connected again, because now they're putting it back on the educators. Take them. You got them. They're all yours again. That was a big mistake. And I had several school districts, I say, don't let that happen. Keep the parents involved. Keep the parents in the loop. How do we do that? That's
and then it was hard because after the pandemic, when they were back on campus, it was shut down. They still didn't have visitors allowed, and for COVID
parents
reasons.
Parents
so they still couldn't come back wholeheartedly. So they were still more like, okay, they're yours. I can't go on campus. And so it finally got normal just this last spring, and everything was kind of back to parents coming and events, and so it's getting. I think it can only get better if we keep at this rate, at this normalcy.
Well, yes, and then once again, I today this morning, Wednesday morning is my New York morning. I do a lot of my East Coast clients, and they're still in school, and they're still going. They have a couple more weeks, but this morning, I can't tell you how many phone calls I got I had cancellations because COVID is rampant again. The kids are all starting summer, ending their school year. COVID is rampant, and it's hitting really hard again on the East Coast. So knowing that, see, here's the ripple. Europe, it came to the East Coast, and now it's going to come here. It's coming, guys. It's coming. Here we go. Josh, you're next, because Omaha is in the middle. That's going to hit our Denver folks.
Right down the line.
It truly has been that way. It really has been.
And
but yeah,
Maribeth, I think a rule of thumb that teachers figured out, well, maybe not Josh because he had his kids back. And Josh, you're so lucky. I'm so jealous
Definitely.
that you got him back. But we had those crazy days of hybrid. But the rule of thumb is the kids are behind 2 years socially.
Yeah.
Our ninth graders are seventh graders.
Yes.
Our
Yes.
11th
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean, and ninth grade is the single hardest year, especially for boys,
Yeah.
nationwide, probably worldwide, because of that developmental stage of where they are. I mean, one foot's bigger than the other. They got an eyeball that's like on the top of their head. Their hair's growing. One ear's looping down to their shoulder. You know, boys are just in trauma in the ninth grade. They got sent home and they never, quote, grew up.
No.
At least in the schools that shut down.
Yeah.
And then you said 2 years to overcome.
Yeah.
That means a lot of these young men and girls too
Yeah.
are going to be developmentally
Yes.
insufficient. I don't want to say that. That's
Yes,
a bad
but
word.
heading into college, and that's
Yes.
the other problem.
Yes.
And that's the pattern we're seeing. I'm seeing a huge influx of 13-year-olds, right? If you think about 13-year-olds, who they were, right? They were in elementary school, and then they literally jumped over junior high, huge developmental moments, right? And went right into high school. Holy moly, right?
And I don't know the answer. I think I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how to overcome that.
Well, there's no magic wand, and that is the problem. But it's not going to be all of you, and that's what I want the world to know. It can't be all of you. It cannot be put on you. We've got to bring the parents back into the system again, as they were during that pandemic, because they have to be educated on how to do it. Katie, do you want to talk?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think something that Christina said that resonated with me was like, not only did the students gain disconnection, so did our families.
Yeah.
And I think like as we aim to help re-enroll families into schools, it's a part of our responsibility as a school. And I'm, speaking as a school leader, that like, it's our responsibility to rebuild the connections between parents. I think something I've observed in the past year and a half of this, just like this connection, is that the stories that parents tell themselves, right, they're only living in their experience, is becoming truth. And sometimes that truth is not quite the reality of a situation, just based on, a middle school student is going to explain their day through a certain, pair of glasses versus the way that like their teacher may or even their parent may experience it. And so I think there is a level of re-engagement that parents also need in supporting their students in reconnecting and rebuilding skills, that our parents in a lot of ways need that as well.
100%, 100%. And I think the piece we have to look at too is how can we change? I know the policy with high school and even college, is disengage parents, which we talked about at the beginning, right? We got to let our kids grow. We can't hold them up the steps, but we need the parents on campus a little bit more, especially in our older grades right now, to redo some of that and re-educate. And I need the parents to see that their child is very similar to the other children that are in their class, because they see what they want to see. They see what they were, who they were, or they see on a TikTok, who's that, or on Instagram, but I need them to see other parents and other children, and which Christina was saying too, they weren't even allowed back on campus. Even though the kids were back, parents couldn't come back, which is a huge piece for them to also see this. I don't know what the answer is there. I don't know how schools can do that. It's a very difficult situation, but we have parents and children who both need to develop, right?
I mean, I think back to when I was your child in school, and like when I'm thinking back, I feel like what you did instead of disengaging from this, like from the experience, was not like, you just engaged more in the school community rather than in like my experience. Like you had us be a part of we had like work bees at our school where we would go.
Oh, work bees, yes.
We didn't have a janitorial staff, so like we would go every month and like do this large, all of the communities coming to help. But like I had such an investment in the school and in the community, even though I knew that you weren't going to be like over my head the entire time while I was doing my schoolwork. Like I knew that you cared about the school and the community that I was building there, even though I wasn't like you weren't forcing me to do a certain thing in my academics.
Sure, no.
And so I think like that could be the answer, is truly like like pushing families to be a part of the community. And so that means like helping in like the 7th grade classroom, even if they're kids in 9th grade, like being invested in the community part of it.
Yeah, truly, truly. And that, and you saw that growing up, and you saw that, but that worked because I was getting to know other children too, right? Not just your class and not just you, but other children, different levels, different parents. And yeah, that truly worked. Yeah.
Right. And I think going back to what I was saying, how it is different in elementary, it's just as important in high school, middle school and high school. I mean, I want to hear back from my kids' high school teachers, or they do. I want to know that they're hearing back, and definitely supporting all the community events. My kids weren't on the football team, but I went to every game, because I did want to see all those other kids. So parents need to know that it doesn't just stop. Yes, we're trying to raise them and be independent and push them out of the nest, but you still need to stand, like you were just saying, Hannah, actually from the background, like from the back and watching the other events and continuing that communication and partnership, because it's definitely important in high school as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And I think in college, I was blessed to have my kids. Yeah. My kids went locally, and I was blessed to be able to be part of that world as well.
Yeah.
Which I enjoyed as a parent, as you can, if any parent would, but but
once
again, not as engaged as I,
right.
There wasn't a lot of opportunities unless you give a lot of money.
Right.
Give us money. Give us more money.
Well, I think, Maribeth, also I think the elementary model is great. You have the room mother or the room parent and so forth. I remember when my kids were in pre-K, we had to serve a certain amount of time in the class, which was great. It was easy because my wife was also a pre-K teacher. That was pretty cool. But high school teachers aren't ready, I don't think, for that. I don't think I think there's a built-in bias, and I'm guilty of that. Of, hey, this is my domain. Get out of here. And what you're suggesting is we need to open it up and have more involvement, more engagement. And I think the high school kid is not ready for that either, frankly. I think the high school kid would be absolutely devastated if their parent came in on a regular basis.
No, I
don't think that.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do that. But
I just think a high school teacher needs to return an email as equally as a 5th grade teacher needs to. That's all. I would never walk in that classroom. I never even wanted to teach in that classroom, but I just think it needs to kind of stay consistent where, hey, and I think high school teachers should get gifts. Like, I still think on superficial levels like that, it needs to be the same, similar. But no, I would never assume you want to volunteer. No.
But Brent, what Christina, but what Christina was saying too is, her children just graduated from high school, and she was in the, she went to the football games, even though her children didn't play football. Yeah. Right. But her child was there, probably in the stands with her friends. I went to football games with my child. Yeah. They didn't play football, but I was there.
Yeah. Right. That's the level, not in the personal space. Right. I agree with you completely there, Brent. Now.
But I think you're right, Christina. I think teachers have to realize when they get an email, you got to jump on it that moment. You can't, if those things pile up, the parent's going to automatically just say, oh, well, that teacher doesn't care.
Yeah, it's going to go down a negative spiral. And of course, the teacher has a life, but I just was so flabbergasted by some high school teachers where all of a sudden it was just like, just no communication. I don't think that needs to be the case, even though they're different levels of ages. So
I totally agree. Totally agree.
But again, okay, so let's look at the time of a teacher, right? I'm looking at Kristen because where do you find time? High school, elementary. I look at Hannah. I look at Kristen. Where do you find time to answer emails? And I have a hard time answering emails. I'm not even a teacher. It's tough. It's tough, and this is where I ask the question within looking at the system, right? The system of schools, principals. Katie, you're our representative here. You're the one. What can we change on that level? Where can we add in, take away, add in, give something to educators so they have time to do that, and make that time and make it a priority and communicate that through the system of the school that this is something we have put great priority on. Once again, it's that we got to look at the whole system. What's lacking here? What I don't something to think about. So
I'm deeply appreciative that we have a 24-hour response promise around email in particular. So it provides teachers with an opportunity to say like, hey, I'm getting these emails. Those are really important. And I have a window of 24 hours to respond. And then, you know, I think asking to say like, hey, I need to have a quick conversation with a parent, like leaning on team can be really helpful, whether that's like a teacher messaging me and saying, hey, can you pop into my classroom for independent practice? Like if I'm available, I'm going to be there to support our teachers for family engagement. But I think as much as email is a very useful tool, it's also probably the least urgent, just in the world of school. And so I think I always am thankful for that 24-hour rule for myself. I was a teacher in my school building and loved it then as well. And that's something that we're very clear about with our families is if this is something urgent, call the office, send a note in the child's planner versus an email, because we are very stuck to a 24-hour response rate. And I think that helps teachers, just like some teachers are still like, I got an email, I have to respond right now. And I think oftentimes that's when tone can be misread or mistakes can be made, or, you know, we can accidentally pour a little bit of fuel onto a like baby spark. And so I think sometimes leveraging 24 hours can be really helpful for our teachers and for parents too.
I also think the great thing about our school is that we have the advisory system set up, because we have a system where it's like we have 18 kids that we are responsible for as like a teacher, even in a different subject area. And so parents have that go-to person. So like if they have an issue with the math teacher, they can still come to me and I can reach out to the math teacher and like get the response that's like helpful to the families.
Yeah.
And it's just such a useful tool.
And you had that, well, Kristen, you're going to have that next year going back to 8th grade, where the 7th and 8th grade does have those small school type settings, which I think in high school might be a good thing to bring back for a while and create that advisory board for the high school. The same idea, but you know, that like the 7th, 8th have those small school with all the teachers, the math, science, history, all collaborate together on a group of kids and are attentive to those kids. So I don't know, something to kind of think about too.
Well, and I like that 24-hour policy. Like that gives us a chance to be a person, right? Like if we are heated in that moment, that gives us a chance to calm down, because I know that this year I had a parent lash out at me. I was not in a place to have a good conversation because I wanted to lay my mind down. But if you have that time to think about and articulate what you want to say, then you're able to build the communication. You're able to build that relationship instead of tearing down bridges, right?
Yeah. So I think that is a great, Katie, that's a great policy. I think that's something we can definitely take away from this, and maybe having that communication. If it's not a system communication, maybe just an individual teacher saying that. Say, hey, this is kind of what I'm going to stick to. But
Maribeth, for parents, if we kind of had hey, write an email or whatever, but then don't send it until you've reread it.
Yes.
Because I've read emails before I've gone to bed, which, by the way, huge mistake. Just don't do it.
Just don't.
And it just, I'm a horrible sleeper anyway. So, oh God.
Yeah.
But I had one of those and I went to bed. I was steaming. I mean, I was just already at a boil. Woke up the next morning. I wake up early and I read it again and I realized, oh, okay. All right. I only read every other word. I didn't read every word, and I selectively read it. So, all right. Not as bad. And I like the idea. And Katie, when did that get, or Hannah, when did that get implemented and institutionalized in your school?
The 24-hour rule has been a part of our school communities since I joined 8 years ago. And so it has been there since the beginning. It's allowed me to say, like, I check my emails on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Okay.
And like, that's okay. And that allows me to like be a bit above the minutia on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Great policy. Kristen, take that back. You're going to like roll that out.
Well, and Brett, you're right too. To teach our parents to write that email but not send it. Especially don't send it until you talk to your children. because a lot of times, especially with grades, like, why isn't that in the grade book? They come home, everything's not, the grades aren't in the grade book yet, and the child comes home from school and the parent attacks the child. What is this? What is this? Like, how many times have I heard a child in session with me, the teacher is just so bad about putting grades in. They always delay, and then my parent attacks me, and then the grades come back in on Friday, and they calm down on the weekend. And, it's just this pattern, right? But maybe teaching parents how to communicate and how to slow down with emails and say, hey, talk to your child first before, if it's a child issue, write it, stop, pause, send it the next day and see if it's still relevant. Right? All right. Who would like to introduce themselves and go with your story? We've heard a lot of voices, but people may not know who you are. So,
should we, Maribeth, should we reintroduce ourselves at this moment as well?
Well, you did a little bit, yeah. You reintroduced yourself, and Josh reintroduced him. Did so.
Cool. 1, 2, 3 added on that. No worries.
Yeah. Who wants to go next?
Go.
Okay.
So Maribeth, thank you for having me on.
Of course.
Nice to connect with you and with all these other educators. I am Katie. I am a dean of students at one of the few diverse by design middle schools in Denver, Colorado. We function as a 6-12 campus. So most of my work is with 6th grade and all of our incoming families, but I definitely still work with community members all the way through their senior year. Prior to stepping into school leadership, I taught elementary school, I taught 4th grade, I taught 6th grade social studies, and I taught 6th grade science, which is really where my heart is. That's who I am. And I think, I am in a unique role where I work with families in a very proactive way, but very often a very reactive way, as kind of the leader for culture and discipline. And I love working with families, even in the most challenging components of schooling and education. And I think I always ask families, at the start of the year to partner with us, even in a secondary setting, to celebrate and share joy, to work with us as we work to navigate support and accountability with their students. I think that's something that has been kind of challenging year to year. It's just helping families understand that you can't have all support and no accountability, and you can't have all accountability and no support. And so working together to find what that unique balance is, both for the family and for the students, respectively. And then I think a big component that we've talked a lot about is around communication and trust. Hannah spoke earlier to this of we hope that our families are assuming our best intent, and we have to remember to assume the family's best intent in communication with and about their children. I think all of that work, all of those hopes and those partnerships is deeply grounded in mutual respect. I think remembering that being a teacher is a profession. It is not a sole identity, right? Every single person involved in this conversation works and has a role that's incredibly powerful, but is also a human and should be treated as a human first. With
your own pieces that coming into that day, right? Coming in, if you just look at the pandemic piece of, you were asked to, put aside, as we all did, we all had to kind of put aside, but working as an educator, you had all your stressors. Josh, you had 3 young children, right, during that time. Christina, you had children in school. It's just, you had to kind of put all that there and then churn on and be a full-time caretaker in a very different setting too, which, we forget that you are human. I'm sitting here looking at humans, and humans come with a lot of things, a lot of stressors, finances, financial pieces. I during the pandemic, I was dealing a lot with death. I was dealing with students who were dying, grandparents who were dying, educators who were dying. How did that something that did affect you? I mean, what was affecting you the most during this last couple of years? What did you find to be, let's make you human here for a minute. Let's let the parents see how human you were and are. What was hard for you? What was that human quality that parents can learn about? you as educators? I don't want to go personal, but you know what? It was tough. It was tough. It is tough. It is still tough. We are dealing with a lot more and a different way. You know, as I introduced, you know, we have wars we're dealing with, and I have, you know, parents and children from many different cultures and across the world, and we have gun violence. I'm going to bring it in here. I have to bring it in here. It is a real problem, and something I would like to talk about a little bit about. You know, I know Josh would like to talk about this, but you know, what are we going to do? What does it look like from your perspective? So I'm going to open that up and maybe see what you want to talk about.
I was actually very lucky in the sense that both my girls graduated from college and we were empty nesters, and I have this office here that I'm able to, you know, I was able to teach in, and I told everybody at school, I can be there because I don't have to be with my children. I mean, I'm very lucky. However, I do, like all teachers, internalize all of the stresses that when teachers are attacked somewhere, we all feel attacked ourselves. When those kids, I don't want to go into the details, but you know, the kids who faced a gun and tried to hide, you know, playing dead and so forth, and so we internalize that. When children who are undergoing transitions, whether it's gender identification or coming out or another way, you know, struggling in many ways with themselves, I internalize that. I, you know, identify with that. And so I'm gonna have to, you know, beg off and say that I was struggling because, frankly speaking, I was pretty lucky from a financial, I mean, I'm 10 minutes away from school too. So yeah. That's just, I, you know, knock on wood.
Yeah, no, truly. Thank you.
I sit in a place where I have a big social media platform, and I sit there when COVID started. I made videos for fun, and they were just to get kids to come to a Zoom meeting so that they would be on class. And that time was hard, having 3 kids, and my kids learned to adapt. My own children learned to adapt. Hey, we're gonna go drop this book off to Sophia so that she has a book to read. My kids didn't know any better. And now we're in a different place where things are getting back to normal and America's going back to normal. And school shootings are becoming a thing again. And that for me, sitting here is really hard. And I might cry, and if I do, I apologize, but I don't want us to go back to where we were, because America was great, and we were on this mountaintop, and we got taken off. I don't want us to go back to the same mountain, because where we're at now, we can see we weren't great, and we have to make changes for our kids to keep them safe.
Yeah.
And that's heartbreaking, because we all of us here love kids. But it can't just be the 7 of us here talking. We have to have people share what is great in education. Let's share that. And what sucks. And let's share it.
That's what we're doing, right? That's
right. We're in a teacher shortage, a huge exodus of teachers, and we're doing nothing to change it. Our school district is so amazing. And what we're doing to get teachers into education is we're saying, we'll pay you $1,000 to student teach. Sweet. What does that do once you graduate? What does that do to keep you in the job? What does that do to keep you safe? What does that do to keep your kids safe? And we got to start talking about those issues. How do we address the bigger issues? And I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to pretend like I do. But I'm also not going to stay silent about it anymore. So I know I sit there with this big platform on social media, but I've learned that is not who I am. That platform I've been blessed with, and I am going to speak out on things that I believe in. And I believe in gun reform. and I believe in protecting our kids, and we're not doing it.
No, we're not. We're not. And that's how I found Josh. I found Josh on that platform, and I'll admit that's where I found him, and I wanted him here. I wanted him here for that reason. I reached out because he has a voice, and the voice needs to be heard, and he has found a platform that is working. And it's destroying you on some level, Josh, because I see your pain and I feel your pain, but your pain is so important for the world to see. All of you. That's why I'm having you on today. I really want the world, people, to understand what it's like for you, what it is like for you to be in that classroom and see this play out and know that the system around you is not supporting you. It isn't, and it's tragic. It is tragic, and it was tragic during the pandemic. It was tragic before the pandemic. It's tragic, and so, yeah. What are the answers? What are the answers?
I feel kind of guilty. And Josh, to your point about the exodus of teachers, I swear, I mean, it just weighed on me, and I thought, God, you know, I don't want anybody to think I'm running out of here, that I was chased out. But I don't know if you go to the store and you've got your sell by date on food, and then you have your use by date. So I'm at the sell by date, and I want to, have some life before I get to the, to the use by. And it makes me feel guilty, though. I mean, Josh and everybody and Kristen, Hannah, everybody who's in the classroom, is the best job in the world. I just loved every single good and bad and indifferent minute. But it's over. You know what I mean? I mean, when you teach the kids of the kids you taught, I don't want to be like a teacher I taught with at Eagle Rock, who a girl walked up and said, "Hey, you taught my grandmother."
Yeah.
She turned in her retirement papers that year. I'm not gonna, I don't think I have that much.
Yeah.
I've got enough in my heart.
Well,
I just don't know if I have enough everywhere else. You know what I mean?
Brent,
And that's something too, to recognize when you're done, when you're, maybe you should not take it too far. So sounds like you deserve your time. You've done your time, and I don't think you should feel guilty one bit. Go travel the world,
Christina,
as long as we can.
I get you. I understand, and I appreciate that. But it doesn't make me,
Right.
You know what I mean?
Can I give you my observation? And like I said, once again, I've had the blessing of knowing this man, and he had my children, and I've watched him with so many other people. And when I told Kristen I was having him on, she's like, yes, you covered. But the reason we all say that, and what I saw when you came back after the pandemic, you were not the same person. Yeah. Your fire was smothered. Yeah. And I'm not saying you weren't a bad teacher, but you're right. You know that the teaching world that you're in right now is not who you were or what you desired or who you are as a human being. And it was really difficult for you, and so for you to lose your flame during that time. Imagine, and I don't want to compare you to the kids, but we need to, because that's how they feel too. But I want to focus on you, and I saw the difference. Yeah. And so when you said you were retiring, I was not surprised. I was like, you know what? It's not the world for him right now. This is not what he, your flame got smothered. You did, and I think it was going back to that whole piece of, you were the cheerleader who was involved with everything and every child, and that opportunity was not there for you.
And that's heartbreaking. I mean, to me, I still felt I had a lot in the classroom. I gave everything all the way to the, last day. The kids didn't like it because, we had assignments and all that. Yeah. And they kept saying, "Hey, what are they going to do? Fire you?" And I was like, "What kind of attitude is that? I mean, that's a horrible attitude." But you're right. It was a much more difficult
transition. It really was. Yeah. But you know what, right? And this is, as Christina was saying too, it's so good to know when you need to not move on, or it's so good to know that, you know what, I need this transition in my life. And you need to go find where your flame is again, and you need to get fuel back for you. Right. And that's okay. And that's okay. Yeah. That's okay. Yeah.
I'll know in August when school starts back. I'll know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right now it's summer vacation. So
yeah. Well, and that's why I wanted to grab you all now in June. We're recording this in June. It's not coming out to August, but I needed to grab you all now while you were still in school mode, because once that summer mode, I know that summer mode, when it hits in, Christina's right on the verge of going there. She's like hours from going to summer mode. I can see it. She's there.
Yeah.
And I know where Christina's going to go. She's so close to going to the summer. So I had to grab you this week. Josh has already been there for a couple weeks here, right? Josh, you've been out for a while. So he's kind of in that mode, you know, I don't know. Hannah's back into teaching summer school. Kristen starts summer school tomorrow. Yeah, so you're kind of sliding back into it a little bit, but yeah. But yeah, tell me a little bit more. Who else wants to talk a little bit about who they are, or what, you know, yeah, how do we solve this? What do we do? What do we do, teachers? What are your thoughts?
I'll say again, I don't have any answers, but I think that we need to turn to Brent here and tell, like, why was he in the profession for so long? And we need Brent to keep talking, right? Like teachers like Brent need to tell their story about why they were teachers for so long, because statistics show you're only going to be a teacher for about 5 years, and then you're going to go do something else where you make a ton more money. So how do we keep great teachers in this profession, passionate teachers? Because I don't think people leave because they're like, oh, I don't like kids anymore. Right. They leave for outside of the box reasons that we can't predict. Well,
I think it's important to look at who we have right now. So I'm going to ask the question, each one of you. Christina, why are you teaching?
Why am I teaching? I like it. There's so many things I like about it. I just felt I like the kids, of course. I like the curriculum. I like my classroom environment is one of my favorite. My organization, I feel like my strong suit is almost my organizational skills. And I see needs for, the youth to need that. So just kind of all the above. I think it's a great career as a second income, as a mother. I feel fortunate that I didn't teach with littles, but I think it would have, it was definitely easier going back in with older kids, but I think it was manageable as a dual income situation. So
yeah, and I think that's
and I was fortunate to be on my kids' same schedule, so that's huge. So there's so many things. Yeah. Doesn't always happen that way with same school district, but just so many perks like that. But yeah. I like it.
Kristen, why do you teach?
Well, I'll be really honest with you.
Be honest, because your story is actually really interesting of why, how you got into this whole teaching. Yeah, yes.
Right. So I just finished my second year of teaching. So if you do the math, I started during COVID.
Oh, wow.
So I have only experienced virtual, hybrid, and then this past year, whatever we want to call that. So that is my entire teaching experience. Going off of just Brent's amazing career, one of the things that keeps me teaching, because I'm not sure right now how to answer why I teach, just because I don't really know what the last 2 years were. It's people like Brent who have been supportive and have been like a cheerleader. Like he talks about bringing plates of cookies. He literally walked into a math department meeting and handed me a plate of cookies for no reason. And I was like, how are there such nice people in the world? But I really think that it's the people that have come before us that can kind of lead the way. And I think for Brent, he's leaving a legacy here of just really, really impactful experiences and people who talk about him. And it's just really amazing to experience those types of people and to want to kind of follow their path. And there are moments where I'm not sure why I'm teaching, because I'm like, this is not it. This is not what I thought it was going to be.
What did you think it was going to be?
Well, I mean, I didn't think I would start my very first year of teaching on a computer.
In a pandemic, yeah.
Yeah, right. That was the hardest.
Yeah. So I think, especially because of the pandemic, there's been this disconnect as a community. And even with teachers supporting other teachers, like I feel as though that wasn't super present when we were all at home, because we were all dealing with things and we were all so tired of Zoom and like technology, and that was our only method of communication. I just think that part of how we rebuild is that community building aspect, with the parents, with other teachers, with students, just all of it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when I asked Kristen to be on this, she says, why? Why would you? And do you know what I wrote? Do you remember what I wrote, said to you?
No.
I said, because you are loved. Your students love you. And I need to share that type, the same thing with Mr. Beaty, your students love you and they love Mr. Beaty. I know Christina, I know Christina doesn't know that I know several of her students, they love you. I know the secrets of your lives, guys, because I'm on the outside looking in, but you have value and you may not know that. And I think that's the shame, right? That you don't know that. And you don't know, Mr. Beaty hears it all the time. He's been around long enough to hear the love. You're a new teacher. You need to hear that. That's why I wanted to make sure you knew that. That's why I invited you here, not because I know you, because you are as loved as Mr. Beaty you're in that same category. And I think that's important for you to know that. And I think that's what Mr. Beaty was trying to tell you by bringing you cookies, that you are loved. And we all have to, I think we need to do that more. We need to tell people.
Yes.
Hannah, why are you teaching?
So many reasons. I've wanted to be a teacher since I was 5 years old. I think truly because
because I grew up school all the time. Yes.
Oh yes, my sister is sick of it. But no, truly, I grew up with my mother who valued teachers so much. So I saw her looking to those people and being like, oh wow, these are amazing people, and this is who I should value. But then as I got closer and actually thought about my career, I wanted to build community. I am a music teacher. I grew up in marching band and seeing how much community matters to people and how much education can provide that community was always really important to me. And then meeting so many teachers, including Mr. Beaty, who just loved this job so much, that made me feel wow, this is a career that you can love and care for. And looking back at all those teachers, they just had a care for students and this profession that made me feel okay, this is something I would really like to commit my life to.
Yes, Hannah, but be honest, you as everybody in this room and everyone has said, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can survive financially. Christina said, yeah, 100%. It's a great second income. It's a great second income.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you survive financially? How do we make it work? It's tough. And Hannah, you've said that many times, am I going to be able to do this? Right? So it's tough. It's a tough one. Josh, are you dual income, Josh? Are you?
I make some money off social media now.
Yeah.
But
it's tough.
Before that, yeah, I did driver's ed. So I taught driver's ed 6 days a week.
Oh God. Yeah. No. So true.
When you talk about the financial problems that teachers face, people are well, you only work 10 months of the year. No, we don't. Because we do professional development during the summer.
Yeah.
And we have I don't know how it is for anybody else, but our sick days, I've got one day that I can say, don't ask me questions about. And the rest I have to provide doctor notes for. That's not vacation. My vacation is the same as any other business person can have.
Yeah.
I got a couple days during the fall, 3 days during the spring. Around Christmas, we don't have that many more days than anybody else.
Yeah. No, I know.
Plus, it's a 24-hour, 24-hour, 7-day a week, 365-day a year job. I'm still thinking, wow, I'm going to do this and that, and
right. And the bell rings, and what do? You go to a kid's game, right? It's not a 9-to-5 job,
right?
It is way more than that.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Who hasn't spoken yet? Katie, why did you choose education? Why did you?
Similar to Hannah, I knew I wanted to be a teacher really young, and it was cemented in my teens when I was coaching horseback riding. I became a teacher and studied education in college because I just love being around kids. There's just so much joy in seeing the light bulb turn on in a child's brain. I grew up with a brother who's neurodivergent, and so, you know, watching him struggle at school when I just didn't have the same challenges, I was really interested to understand how education was different, how his experience was different than mine. And so I decided to do education and never looked back. I loved, and I got a chance to teach for about 5 weeks this year to support a teacher, and when she was on leave, and had just a blast. And, you know, I certainly don't know that I'm fully have a door closed to teaching, but it's truly one of the most humble and privileged professions that exists.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool. Anyone else want to share that topic, that idea? Josh, did you share why you? I mean, a little bit. You kind of gave us a little bit of that.
Yeah, I feel
because it was your childhood. It was your childhood.
I feel like I shared mine when I first started talking. I listened to Hal Bowman though, and he said, when you forget what your why is, just start very basic. Why are you doing what you do? Well, I signed a contract. Why did you sign that contract? I needed money. Why did you need that money? Well, I went to college. And you go all the way back until you get to the very most basic thing that you can say, where there is no, well, why? And it always, always, for every teacher, goes back to the way that somebody made you feel.
Yeah.
And so like I said earlier, I go back to Mr. Henry. I love that guy. He made me realize what it meant to be loved outside of my mom and dad.
Yep. That is the basis right there, right? That is the basis. We're going to conclude here very soon. I know we're going long here, but can we all just talk real briefly, because this is a hot topic, and I don't want Josh to cry about it, but he is passionate about it, and I want to know what your thoughts are. I really do. I want parents to know what your thoughts are. What do we do to keep you safe at school? What do we do to keep educators safe at school? What do we do to keep kids safe? What do we do, guys? What are your thoughts? Because we all have thoughts on this one.
I can tell you a not do, and that is arming teachers is perhaps the dumbest, most asinine idea.
Katie's snapping. Katie, what does that mean, Katie? Does that mean yes?
I mean, understand.
Agree. Yeah.
I remember my first gun that I got when I grew up, and it was the happiest day of my life. And I remember learning how to shoot guns and growing up in a gun culture in Texas. I get it. I know what guns are, how to use them, and so forth and so on. But my God, guns in school and just the deflection from reality, this complete just separation of guns, and they've become this fetish that are stand-in for so many other deficits in somebody's mental or physical well-being, I suppose. But that is not a solution. Hardening schools is not a solution. The door instead is, my God, what garbage. It was a door left ajar. What absolute nonsense. And then just even saying, well, mental health. What the hell does that mean? That doesn't answer anything. And it just leads us down a road of, well, what is your definition of crazy? Oh, I know it when I see it. That is not a solution. It's much bigger. And I think, Josh, you kind of hit on it. And that is gun reform, throughout society, but it has to be real. Whatever you want to call the bill that they're discussing right now is window dressing at best, which is a good start, but it is not a solution. It's not.
Yeah.
So that I'm off my high horse. I can keep going.
No, thank you. Who else?
Well, and the door issue is hard because we've all been that teacher. Yeah. We have all opened that door to get some fresh air, to go out for a walk, to do blank.
Yeah.
Stop putting the blame on teachers. This is not a teacher issue. It's not a school issue. This is a societal issue that needs Congress to make real changes for us. And arming teachers, like you said, is asinine.
Yeah.
We cannot do that, because what are they willing to do? Then it goes back on teachers. Then it's the teacher's fault when
For not stopping the, yeah, for not stopping, yeah.
right,
Yep.
when the teacher doesn't go and engage, because we're not trained to do that. But now it's your fault because you had a gun and you didn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, somebody else has to speak, because I'll just go off.
Josh,
I mean, I completely agree with you, Josh. Like, and Brent, you too. Everything y'all said, it's just excuses. It's just excuse after excuse, and placing blame on a systemic issue that people are too afraid for their pockets to be lightened. I think a lot of politicians are afraid to name it and be candid and say, like, this is a systemic societal issue. It is very clear that we need, universal background checks and age. If I can't have a beer before I'm 21, why can I have an automatic rifle before I'm 21 years old?
Yeah.
My brain, my frontal lobe isn't developed until I'm 25. I'm still an adolescent.
Right. Yeah.
I don't understand the developmental psychology that is just getting missed and moving into blame. I think
Yep. You're right.
You hit on it.
dumbfounding.
It's money. It's money. You can look at, and when does this air? August? Beginning of August? Okay. So when everybody else listens to this, wait until November. There is somebody running for Congress in Nebraska. His name's Tony Vargas, and he is running on common gun reform, common gun sense. He will not win. Why? Because we live in a conservative state. He will not win. But he makes the most sense for what is needed in schools to keep kids safe. And if you listen to him speak, everything he says, you'd probably be like, yep, I agree with that. Yep, totally true, totally true. But he won't win.
Right. Yeah.
Because we live in a nation that thrives off money, not keeping people safe.
Well, and that's why teachers are paid what they're paid. I mean,
correct.
That's right. Where is the value? Where is the value? Where are we putting our resources? And that's what it comes down to. Where are we putting our resources? Who else has an idea? Please come up with a magic idea here, guys. Somebody. Christina, Hannah, Kristen.
I mean, there is no magic idea. It truly is.
There isn't.
Text and banning. That's it. But I think hitting on the point of it's all run by money. I mean, this is why so many of the things in schools are not working. And it's why we're talking about this whole connection piece of families too. We started to lose that connection because we needed to open schools, because we needed to get back to the normal to keep the money going the way it goes. That is just the motivation for all of this. And the more we can pause and try to take a step back and try to build those moments that exist without money and without that motivation, that is where we can try to make a difference in the now where we don't have control.
Well, yes, and Hannah, look at the last shooting we had. Well, not the last one. Let's look at Texas. I don't know how far back, but if you look at that child and you look at what I do when I see these cases happen, I go back and look at the child's life. That's what I do. I go right back and I research about anything I can find about what happened. And if everything we talked about here today is that child fell off the communication with adults, with teachers, with the family, and there's a disconnect the whole way down this child's life. And if you listen to his friends at the very end of his life, everyone said he was not talking to anybody.
Right.
Talk about communication. He was not heard anywhere during his life, and everything was ignored, was not done correctly in so many ways. And I'm going to put it out there. It was not done correctly. He fell through the cracks. And he was silent at the end. Why was he silent? Why? Because no one heard him.
And to that point, it kind of goes along with what Josh was saying about, blaming the teachers. We have all seen the kid who was struggling, every one of us. And we cannot determine whether a kid that's just, has a crush on somebody and they don't love them back or whatever, distinguish that from the kid who's a real danger. We aren't capable of making that judgment in the short time. As a high school teacher, junior high, in the short time we have the kids, you're like, we got to teach the math. But it goes back to also got to make the connections. You got to love the kids and then talk to the kids. I stand outside my door. I stood outside my door.
You do.
Before every
passing period, he's standing outside his door. Yep.
Every single time.
Yep.
And it was a way also for me to say to the kids, okay, this is done. I got a new group coming in. Let's get out there and I'm going to greet everybody and face. And even in that small amount of time, there is connection made. But I don't know that I could have prevented that. I don't. It
isn't just the education. It isn't. But it's the combination of everything. The parents, the education, the community, right? It's everything. And that's what we forget. Again, I'm going to remind you all, it's not just you. And I don't want you to take this on. It isn't just you. And if anything you take away, I want you to hear that it isn't you are alone, but you shouldn't be alone.
Right.
And that's the problem. You are alone and you shouldn't be alone in this process of teaching, of educating. As parents, shouldn't be alone. Right? We just shouldn't. So any last words as we close out? Because we're going on 2 hours here. So I'm going to be in trouble with my producer on this one, guys.
I want to thank you, Maribeth. I've got a split, and everybody on the call. I just really enjoyed this. And Kristen, I'm going to be around a little bit next year helping out. I'm going to be helping out Sarah in the handoff on AP Gov and the new guys coming into my classroom. So I can't say bye. You know what I mean? I can't say goodbye.
No, I know.
Thank goodness.
I love it too much. But different way.
But I do want to thank you all. I really do appreciate this, and I would like to put out the flag again to you maybe mid-year next year, and do this again and do a follow-up, and see where we all are and see what's happening, and see how our lives are different, the same, or changed. Because there's so much unresolved here, and there's so much more. So maybe right before the election might be a good time to kind of come back on here. But I hope you will accept my invitation to come back and be part of this group again. So thank you all. Any last words that you would like to share? Please take the stage if anyone would like to say one more piece. Anyone?
Yeah, stay in the business, everybody. Stay.
Okay. Stay and come. Come be an educator. Be an educator.
Yes, recruit. Yes, join us.
Recruit. All right. Thank you all very, very much. And have a great summer. Enjoy your summers. You are officially can go into summer mode now. I give you permission as of today. Right now, as we log off, you can go. It's summertime. And so enjoy.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.